Hello and welcome for a second time to Africa, the countryside of South Africa, just outside Johannesburg, for the second in our series with Credo Mutwa, the Zulu Sanusi, or shaman, as many people around the world would call him, the keeper of the history, the true history of Africa and the Zulu people, and the official storyteller, in other words, the carrier of the knowledge and the symbolic stories of the Zulu nation. He is, without any question in my mind whatsoever, the most remarkable, astonishing man it's been my honor to meet. And to share his incredible knowledge has been a time I personally will never forget. In the first of these videos, we discussed with Credo the story of the Chitahuli, the reptilian extraterrestrial race from another world that came to the earth in the far ancient world, that brought advanced knowledge which built many of the, according to conventional history, unexplainable, magnificent structures all across the world, thousands and thousands of years old, and also interbred with humanity, creating hybrid crossbreed bloodlines. These bloodlines, as my own research for books like The Biggest Secret and Credo's immense knowledge of the African history, which he's gathered in his nearly 80 years of traveling this vast and amazing continent, both correlate the same story, remarkably, that this Chitahuli, this reptilian race, interbred with humanity, and the bloodlines became the almost demigods, the royal ruling lines of the ancient world, particularly in the ancient Near and Middle East, which were the middlemen, if you like, between the extraterrestrial gods to which people were literally sacrificed and the people in general. And as the genealogical research is showing, these crossbreed bloodlines, the Nephilim, as the Old Testament of the Bible calls them, the result of the interbreeding between the sons of God, as the Bible calls them, the sons of the gods in the true translation, and earth women, the marriage, the bringing together of the sons of God and the daughters of men. This Nephilim crossbreed race, as the genealogy has shown, came out of that area and into Europe to become the aristocracy and the royal families of Europe, and then through the British Empire became the ruling bloodlines of most of the world. In fact, today, almost all of the world. Like the 42 presidents out of the hundreds of millions of people who have been Americans since the Declaration of Independence in 1776, 42 have become president. They're all related. What? And they go back to these ruling aristocratic families, which eventually go back to the crossbreed, interrelationship, intercourse between the Chitahuli, the Anunnaki, as some accounts call them, and human beings. And it's the British Empire that we're going to talk about now, in its relationship to taking over the planet in a way that today is now global. The British Empire became the British Empire because this network of bloodlines, which had become known as the Illuminati, centered itself in London at operational level, particularly after the arrival from Holland of William of Orange, who became King of England in 1689. And from that time, he signed the charter that created the Bank of England, and the banking system as we know it started to expand and emerge. But from that time, the British Empire and the other European empires came into being, and they took the planet over. Now, one immensely important area that they completely controlled and raped was the fantastic continent of Africa. And to look at how Africa was taken over by this Illuminati, Chitahuli, reptilian crossbreeds, and indeed the reptilian race itself that's behind it all, is to see how the world has been taken over, the methods used, the way it was done, the manipulations. And what we're going to talk to Credo about now, among many other things, is the way that the continent of Africa was hijacked by the Illuminati. And I asked him first to tell me the story of how this great continent was taken over.
So, there are mysteries in this world that we as thinking human beings must look into. And one of these mysteries is this. There is overwhelming evidence of the fact that before Africa was actually colonized by the white people from Europe, it was first prepared by strange people for this colonization. When the first Portuguese ships started sailing around the Cape of Good Hope, strange beings appeared amongst our people, strange human-like creatures, usually creatures of great height, abnormally tall, human-like beings, some of them with only 1 foot, appeared amongst our people, and they started doing things there which made it easier for the colonialists to invade us and to conquer us.
What were they like in terms of their color and skin, Credo?
Say, we do not know, but there are those who described them as very, very white, chalk white in appearance. This went on for so often that it became traditional to our people to represent these beings with white chalk. You found masks amongst our mask makers which were smeared entirely in white chalk to represent these creatures. These creatures were usually about 8 feet tall, very, very slender, and they used to wear robes made of the tanned hides of certain type of antelope, usually the intensely black sable antelope.
What name did the people give to them?
We gave them the name Izilo Zengubo, the beasts of the terrible blanket. These creatures were dressed exactly like Christian monks, with hoods and long robes. In fact, I will draw you a likeness of one of them as it is shown in a rock painting. Now, these creatures used to live in holes in the ground, or in underground caverns, or in gullies over which a roof of logs and vegetation as well as sods was placed. And it may be of interest to you, sir, that Portuguese explorers and Portuguese seamen used to see these one-legged creatures hopping about and sometimes disappearing into the ground as if by magic. And these creatures were called by the Portuguese sailors monopods. They wore a long robe that reached down to their ankles, and they appeared as they moved through the bush as if they only had one leg. Monopods were seen in Africa, and they were also seen in America before America was colonized by the white people.
Among the Native Americans?
Yes, sir. One of the one of the things that amaze me is that the story of America and the story of Africa was the same. It is said, sir, that these monopods introduced certain knowledge to our people. They actually prepared our people mentally for what was to come. For example, these monopods, these beasts of the terrible blanket, used to wear a cross-like ornament on their chests as a charm, a cross made of either gold or silver. Doesn't it amaze you that when the Native Americans saw the cross painted on the sails of Christopher Columbus's ships, they recognized it as a sacred object? Let me tell you, sir, exactly the same happened in South Africa, where our people were made familiar with the cross long before the white man set foot in Africa. And when our people saw this cross, this time brought by missionaries, they recognized it as a sacred object. In other words, now, I don't know how to put this there, but can you put it for me? Our people were prepared long beforehand to recognize certain Christian symbols and Judaic symbols. And when they saw them in the hands of the colonists later, they saw them for what they were. This is one of the reasons why, Mr. Icke, Africans accepted and protected Christian missionaries, even while fighting a life and death struggle against white colonialism. How is it that a man would accept the religion of an invader while at the same time fighting a life and death battle against the encroachments that this invader was making into his native land? This happened in America, and this happened in Africa, and the sources of this acceptance were the same. I wish I could put this in much better English than I'm using now, because I feel it is important.
I think you're putting it very clearly, that it seems that this Chitahuli were going around the world preparing for the occupation from the Illuminati center in London and Europe of these various areas like Native America and Africa.
Yes, sir. The story, you see, a great fraud is being committed in educational circles, in that the educationists in their ivory towers force our young people to look at the colonization of Africa and America as if they were two separate incidents. But certain factors in this colonization were the same in Africa and the same in America, and they achieved exactly the same results. This is why I always argue that the conspiracy, the international conspiracy, began long before colonial times in Africa and in the Americas. And the results were the same. Look at this. Here is the great Zulu king, Shaka. Shaka is a warrior second to none. Shaka is also a prophet second to none. Shaka welcomes white people to his empire of Natal. Shaka allows missionaries to operate freely through his country. And when Shaka dies, before Shaka died, he warned his half-brother, Dinga, that he must under no circumstances attack the white people, and that he must allow missionaries to operate freely amongst the Zulu people. In fact, during the reign of King Dinga, Shaka's half-brother, two missionaries, Reverend Halstead and Reverend Owen, had a mission station within sight of King Dinga's great village. But wait, sir, let me point out one thing. These missionaries were converting our people to Christianity, and they often went out of their way to criticize and undermine the king's authority in the eyes of their converts. In other words, we have an amazing phenomena here where a great king is being undermined by the very people he has allowed to preach freely in his country. Why? Not a single South African scholar has ever asked himself why. Why were our people so seemingly stupid as to allow a foreign religion into their country?